So I know you've been expecting me to preach, and I didn't plan on preaching today because I thought I'd share a testimony and also a bit of a report back. So you guys who are here today, you will get that, because on Sundays when I'm coming back to preach, this thing is history and we need to continue with the word. So, okay, so that's not going to take I might maybe just allude to one or two things, but that definitely won't be the main issue. So I'm glad you are here this afternoon. The Lausanne 4 Congress in Incheon, Seoul, Korea, I think was just something that was absolutely phenomenal in the sense of getting 5,000 people from across the globe to come together at one place with one objective, and to listen to the voice of God. So even as I went and I entered into the whole dynamic of the Congress, I also asked God, I said, I am here for a purpose. I know what I'm doing here, but I also want you to tell me what is it that you want me to also be listening to, so that as I go back, it'll impact my life and also the life of the church. Now, that's going to be for another time, not for tonight. So let me start off with, that just so happened someone photobombed me there while I was trying to take a picture. So that's Brother Sridhar. We actually traveled to the Congress that Sunday at about 2 o'clock. I had to be at a meeting on that Sunday when the Congress started. And so we were sitting together on the bus, and as we got in, he said, let's take a picture together. So that's one of the only pictures I got with that big, the whole sign in there in place, and very few people in the background. So that's one of the better pictures with very few people in the background. And so it was phenomenal just being there at the Songdo Convencia in Incheon, Korea. But before I start, let me just offer a couple of words of appreciation and thanks. And I think that's where we need to start. Firstly, to God for the wonderful opportunity, a divine appointment. I'm a firm believer that the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord. It's a verse I've quoted many, many times. Not that I abrogate to myself a particular position in terms of who I am in terms of righteousness. However, I do know that the Lord's eyes roam to and fro along the earth to see those whose hearts are totally committed to Him. 2 Chronicles chapter 29, I think, verse 11. So I'm a firm believer of that. I think many of you have heard me say time and time again that faithfulness plus obedience is equal to blessings. And very often we want the blessing without remaining faithful, and part of being faithful is being obedient. And so I think this, for me, is just to offer God praise and thanksgiving that of the many, many people that applied, that I could have been chosen to be here. And just to tell you how significant this is, when I was interacting with a few people, especially folk from India who visited our country very often and go back, they were asking me about other people that they know and they've met in our country, names of pastors and leaders and others, and asked me, where are they? I said, no, I know them, but they're not here. And truth be told, there were only 3 Indians from South Africa that were present in this conference. Over 100 and some odd South Africans that were present at this Congress. There were only 3 Indians. It was myself, Pastor Cyril Pillay, and another pastor by the name of Richard Pillay, I think, from Phoenix or the North Coast area somewhere. So it goes to show that, when you look at the whole dynamic of it, to be at the center of God's will and to be obedient. Because here it's not about who you are, it's about what God wants to do with you and through you. And you're not calling the shots. You're not calling the shots here, and God is at work in your life. So wonderful opportunity to be there. Secondly, to the leadership of the church. I want to thank God for the leadership here. I'm not going to mention anyone in particular. The entire leadership of QEBC, who has been supportive of this initiative from the very outset. Even to the point of saying, Pastor, you don't need to worry, we will sort out things here. And so a large part of the cost for the registration of the conference, which was $1,200, of that, because we did it in early payment, was $1,100. And when you think about it, and I also met people there who could not pay but attended. because someone else, in some other country, somewhere else, someone sponsored them to be there. And so when you think about that we are in a position to be able to take care of our own needs and not sponge off others. It would have been very easy. Even my hotel accommodation, I could have canceled my hotel accommodation, got my refund, and allowed someone else from another country to pay for me. But when the notice came, listen, we will, we've sorted, we've found some free accommodation for you. Would you take it? And I said, no, please, I've already paid. I've booked already, I've paid. I don't need the money back. Let someone else benefit from that. So that's the kind of spirit that we need to go into. So I thank the church leadership for being able to do that. And of course, the church family, for those that came alongside and sponsored and helped with this trip, the airfares alone, and then the commute travel, the hotel accommodation, and all of that, taken care of 100%. I didn't use any money from my pocket. Yeah, I may have used for spending, whatever, but no money from my pocket went towards the actual cost of the Congress itself. So thank the church family. And then, of course, a special thank you for the day that I was leaving on the 20th of September is a day to remember. Prayers, I pray. I'm a firm believer in prayer. But God, we prayed like He never prayed before. And I remember just abandoning it to the Lord. And that's something that I've learned over time. You abandon it to the Lord. You do everything you can. Elida as soon as she heard about it, she already booked the next flight for me to get to Johannesburg. And I had to make sure that my luggage got out of the plane in time so that I can take the next flight to rush to Johannesburg. She called the Cathay Pacific Airlines and said, listen, my dad's coming. Please make sure everything there. Flight agent who had booked me through made all the arrangements for them to receive me there. The plane landed a bit late. By the time I got to the plane and rushed there, they had closed the gates and they'd gone. But 5 minutes late, they'd gone. And so that set into motion a whole lot of other activities. But God came through. I reached Korea 1.5 hours later than my original flight. Now that's amazing. And here's the beauty part of it. Those that came at 2 o'clock, landed at 2, were leaving the airport when I arrived because they had to wait for the shuttles. So when we went in, a whole lot of them left, and then our lines formed. And because the buses already started moving quite fast, we got on. They were like, hey, you're here. We are praying for you. I said, yeah, thank you. God answered your prayer. So thank you guys for praying. Actually, it was traumatic because I received a call from the flight agent who said, the next available flight on Cathay Pacific for you is on the 23rd of September. That will be the Tuesday or Monday. So that wouldn't have worked. But thank God, thank you all for praying. And then my family. I'm not sure how to thank them, whether they're happy to get rid of me. But no, I'm joking. But I think just their prayerful support. So I want to get that out of the way because that's very, very important. Let's get to Lausanne. Just a very brief history. I know Christy has been doing a fantastic job, Elder Christy, in giving and disseminating information to you. And he does fantastic work in terms of missions. But just a brief history of Lausanne. The Congress took on that name, Lausanne, because of the first Congress that was held in 1974. Held in 1974 in Lausanne, Switzerland. It was initiated by people like, you can see on the picture there, you got John Stott, the guy with the tie that's looking straight at us, and the guy from the side view, that's Billy Graham. Other people like Samuel Escobar, Francis Schaeffer, Carl Henry. These are notable theologians of the time and people that were the movers and shakers of world evangelization. And so it was actually Billy Graham's desire to gather the world, to chart a way forward so that we can fulfill the Great Commission. And part of those pillars that were established was that the gospel needs to go to all people, to every nation. The gospel to all people. And that was the first pillar. And then, of course, there's 3 others. And then there were 2,700 delegates in that first meeting, taken from about 150 countries. And Africa was also represented in that first Congress. And they charted the way forward, and from which we get the Lausanne Covenant, the first Lausanne Covenant that came out in 1974. We studied that in theology. Every theology student studies at some stage in their mission endeavor or something else, they will study this. And I've studied it as well. 2024, 50 years later, There were 5,000 people in person in Incheon, Seoul, Korea, and about 4,000 plus virtual attendees from around the world, represented by 200 countries, with 7 official languages present at the Congress and multitude others being translated while the Congress was going on. I took some pictures of those booths with all of the translators there, and very, very advanced. The technology is extremely advanced. As you walk in, you pick up your piece, you go to your table, they're talking in English, you tune into the local frequency there, and someone's talking in Russian or Spanish or Portuguese or whatever it is. So that was really phenomenal. The 1989 one was held in Manila, Philippines. Pastor Victor Lazarus attended that. And many times when he was preaching and teaching, he would refer to this. And so as I was growing up and listening to this, so for me it was reality. For him it was, well, you've done what, you're now walking in my footsteps, kind of a thing. 2010 was in Cape Town, right here. Now the reason it was held in 2010 was it was a 100-year anniversary of the Edinburgh, or the Great Awakening, and the Edinburgh Conference that took place in 1910. And so in 2010, they marked the 100-year anniversary, but they also had it in Cape Town. Many people asked me at Lausanne, was I there in 2010 because I knew I was South African? And I said, no, I wasn't, and they wanted to know why. And I said, because I just entered ministry, full-time ministry, in 2009. And it was too soon to leave the church and to go away to attend a conference of that nature. It would have been a wonderful opportunity, but my call was here to the local church. And of course, 2024 in Seoul, Korea. So that's just a brief history of Lausanne. As we gathered in Incheon that first Sunday evening, there were many speakers. This is the, I think, the deputy chair of the organizing committee. And he gave a quotation. In fact, the church in Korea has a very rich Christian heritage. Very, very rich Christian heritage. In fact, at the moment, it's at the forefront, of missions. One of the largest churches in the world that meets on a Sunday morning meets in Korea, in person. That's been not, it's over 100,000 members. And they meet at about like half of that on a Sunday morning. I missed that first Sunday morning service. I didn't know people were going to it. When the message started going around, it was a bit too late for me to get there. And then I missed the next Sunday because I had already flown out of Korea by Saturday. And so some people actually went to the church. But he gave a quote from Dr. Samuel Moffat, one of the Presbyterian missionaries that went to Korea. And he made this comment in 1910 at the Edinburgh Conference. He said, it is not impossible, I say, for God to bring through the little despised, subjugated, humiliated Korea a rich spiritual blessing to all the Far East, and to manifest his might by making Korea not a political power among the nations, but a spiritual power. In 1910, that's being said. And in 2024, the nations of the world gather in Korea for this conference to impact the rest of the world for the next 50 years. In fact, I'll mention something about 2033 just now. So it's amazing that people like this, close to the Lord, walking with the Lord, are able to make these pronouncements, and for us to be able to see that. Dr. Michael O, the Lausanne Movement CEO, is Korean, but he lives in the US. He said there were two main reasons that the event was being held at this particular time, and L4 is Lausanne 4, is that it's the first global conference in a hyper-connected era of the fourth industrial revolution. In fact, I shared pictures, right? So some of you have seen some of those pictures. Just with the entire setup, and some of you went online, I think, and watched some of those videos, it's phenomenal to think what's taking place. And then immediately as things are happening, social media and everything else is just interacting and things are moving out across the globe. Absolutely phenomenal. And so one of the major things that took place at Lausanne was the whole digital strand. How do we do church in the digital age? And that's the next move. The church is moving into a digital age, not just with the technology we use employing, but the church by far is moving faster in the digital age than it is actually moving on the ground. And then the next point was, second reason for us to being at Lausanne was that it's the first global mission conference in a polycentric era of global missions. Now, that may not mean a lot, but the word poly means many. Polycentric means moving from many points or localities. So that means QEBC becomes one of those centers. And that's being multiplied over and over. There's the sending and the receiving that's taking place. In fact, now missions is no longer defined as a person leaving a place going to a particular place. Missions is defined in this broader sense, from everywhere to everywhere. That's missions. We've had all these fancy definitions as we studied theology and studied missiology over the years. Missions now is just defined as that. From everywhere to everywhere. And that's what it is. And so we are in that era right now where the impact for the gospel is being made. And then he left us with this on the closing night, and he said, you need to ask yourself, why are you here? Why are you here? This is not because you have earned a place here, or you have paid your way here. You are not here because you are a consumer. That means just to take from us. But you are here as a steward of what God has given to his church to take back to your church, to your nation, and to impact that. And the good thing about this is that many of us have bought into it. In fact, the KZN group that went to Korea, meeting at the end of the month, the South African group met at Korea for one meeting. And so there's a lot of networking and collaborating taking place in this time. So that's the nutshell in terms of what the event that took place in Korea was about. The theme for this year was, let the church declare and display Christ together. Two words that declare and display. One is witness in word. Two is witness in works. That means those two need to work together. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. That sense of synergy between the works and the words. Sometimes we default, and as EBC, sometimes we default, even myself, we really focused on the word. But then the works need to match that, isn't it? Jesus says that, and also James reminds us, what good is our faith if it's without works? And so that sense of us being able to connect those two. So the church needs to declare, and it must display, that Jesus Christ is Lord. And when you do that together, and we do that together, it's this whole sense of collaboration. So collaboration was another major theme at the conference. Collaborating, that means networking, talking, consulting with each other, and coming together with our different ideas from different perspectives, and talking, coming to the table. And the entire conference just revolved around, and I'll talk about that a little bit. So what was the background for this conference? What informed the conference? Not because some people felt that they needed to meet. For the first time in history, the history of the church, a study was done on what impact has been made by the Great Commission from the time Jesus gave it to now. So you've had pockets of things taking place, but nothing done globally. As you would have the State of the Nation address, state kind of a thing. This is the state of the Great Commission report. That's only the cover. It's close to 600 pages. We had to read that before we went to the Congress. By the way, we did a lot of reading before we went to the Congress. What is phenomenal about this is that it is tracking and mapping what the church has done, and what the church is doing, and what the church should be doing. So if any one of you wants a copy of that, it's on PDF. I can just send you a copy of that. But this is what informed the entire Congress. That means all that was planned, the entire structure, was around this particular document. So I'm going to just zero in on one or two things this evening because of time. We don't have time to cover everything. But I pray that as I talk, it'll also be edifying to you. I think what's important here is you sent me, one person. I'm coming back and I'm informing about, how many people here, Christy? About 40 some odd people, 40, 50 people. Already the impact is already made. You in your little corner will be telling someone else about what your pastor told you. Maybe not everything, one or two things. And that just keeps moving on and on and on. And so that's the whole effect that this has. One person in this church went, and now 50 people are hearing it. And that message keeps going on. On a couple of weeks' time, I'll address the council, our EBC council. On yesterday morning, I was addressing SAT's staff, about 45 of us that were gathered. So that impact of it just moving on. And SAT's already caught the vision. They've asked us to start writing papers over the next, from now to the end of the year, just write papers on the Lausanne conference. So that message now goes out even further. So you can imagine the effect that this has. So I'm just going to focus on one or two things, and the rest of most of the other slides are pictures, but the first couple of slides here is just a bit of more content. So what is the spiritual focus? The spiritual focus of Lausanne was around the book of Acts. So 28 days prior to the conference, we were asked to start reading the book of Acts progressively and praying through the book of Acts and certain things that we had to focus on in the book of Acts. And so as we came to the Congress, we all went to the Congress having read the book of Acts, knowing what it's about, and then getting people who were going to be preaching, laying the foundation. So the morning session, which started at 9, the first part of the morning session was expository, was preaching, laying the foundation, the spiritual foundation for the remainder of the day. And then the mid-morning session, so you had this morning session, and then the mid-morning session. The mid-morning session was no longer the theology, but the practice. That means we understood what the Bible was saying about a particular aspect, and then the mid-morning session, there were 3 or 4 other speakers, about 15 minutes or 10 minutes each, were talking to the main theological premise for the day. And then as we went to the further part of the day, that went to the collaborative sessions. So the first half of the day was very spiritually focused, very intentionally so as well. So the first session and the last session, the first Sunday, which was the opening session, was the church gathered. And then the last session, as we closed on Saturday, was the church being commissioned to go out. So all of us actually signed a covenant before we left as to what we are committing ourselves to do in terms of achieving the Great Commission. Over the remaining days, the Monday to Saturday, the morning sessions, as we went through the book of Acts, Neville, you got my phone back? Okay, yeah. Let me put some notes on that as well. So, the Monday we spoke about the empowerment of the Holy Spirit in achieving God's mission. There is no mission without the power of the Holy Spirit. There's no mission without the power of the Holy Spirit. It has to be done in the power of the Holy Spirit. And so that was the first day. As they walked through the book of Acts, that was the theme for the day. On Tuesday, it was God's mission through the witness of his people. The people that were gathered in the upper room, the people that heard that, and then progressively Philip and others down the line, about the witness that God's people had to ensure that the Great Commission goes out to everyone. Now, okay, so let me just get to my different days here. I took notes every day, so just to... So when you think about God's missional society, and you look at the Bible, and you look at the book of Acts, how God used different people to be able to take the gospel out. And so it's inherent upon all of us to be able to carry that gospel through. But also in understanding that is to know that within the church, there are dynamics that work themselves out, even with people. And we think about leadership, Paul's leadership, Peter's leadership. We think of the contestation that they had. For example, Paul and Barnabas, John Mark. When you think about those and Silas, even amongst leaders there was this debates. But yet God used all of that, for his glory. Because all of them were dependent on the Holy Spirit to move them out. The Wednesday was the whole theme was around persecution and adversity. how the church was persecuted. For example, Peter, right there at the very beginning in Acts chapter 4, being restricted from sharing the gospel. And as you go through the book of Acts, right through, how persecution then announced the church. On it was Wednesday, Thursday, in cities and the workplace, how's God's mission. And this was a major theme. In fact, the session after lunch, every day, session after lunch, there was a meeting for about an hour and a half, with just this major theme of how the church needs to be effective in the workplace. Here's an important statistic for you. 99% of the mission field is in the workplace. Here's the other important statistic. 99% of our missionaries, who should be our missionaries, are also in the workplace. That's you. Not in the church. Not in some village somewhere. They're in the workplace. And so how we use, how we actually integrate that. That means every single person who's in the workplace is a missionary. And that's your mission field. And they went right through the book of Acts again, just picking out incidents of people being involved in mission in the marketplace, in the cities, and so forth. And then through intergenerational disciples. This was another major theme. And then on the Saturday morning, God's mission to the ends of the earth through the dynamic missions movements in the majority world. And that was just covering what God is doing through the nations. So as we would listen to these sessions each morning through that first hour and a half, we sat around tables. I think you saw pictures of it. We sat. So imagine you got 5,000 people all seated around tables, 6 to a table. You can imagine the size of this auditorium. 5,000 people, that's beside all the people with the sound, people with everything else. Everyone seated around tables. So we were sitting around tables listening to the word. And after the word was presented, we then had to reflect on the word in our table groups. Now, I was also a table leader for the plenaries. And so these are the 6 people around our table. The couple that you see on the extreme left, Sandra and John, they are pastors in church in Hong Kong, and they're also missionaries, and they work with Movement Day. He does a number of things in terms of church planting, church growth. The gentleman next to them is Emmanuel. Emmanuel is from Ghana, from the Church of Pentecost, one of the biggest churches in the world. They are in over 160 countries, I think, over 150, I don't know how many million. It's the fastest growing African church in the world. Their strategy for church planting is phenomenal. I've read some books on them already before I went to the conference, and I met a person from there, and we were able to connect and talk through it. And now the strategy is now the strategy is in the cities. They're moving to major cities in the world, whether it's London, whether it's Brussels, whether it's Paris, in there, African churches, Church of Pentecost. Massive, massive. And the brother next to him, I just forget which organization he works for, but Ray Mensah, also a very committed Christian and involved in missions. The guy next to him, a young Irish gentleman, Phil, he works in Cyprus. He works in Cyprus with World Vision. Very critical young man. Everything we had a question for. Always had another point of view. And of course, I realized that sometimes young people don't know the full story. So they know one part of the story and so fortunately with the age around the room and around the table, we were able to help him as well to understand something. But good questions to hear him ask those questions. And of course, the gentleman on the extreme right. And we were at table C34. So you had these tables from about C up to about C90, I think. So from C1 to C90, and then you had from A to all the rest of the alphabet, right? And so you had 5,000 tables that are seated. So when you went in, the reason for this was you didn't have to rush in to go and get your space. Your space was allocated to you on our tags. We had a table you were sitting at, and which are the groups you were joining in after that as well. Very well organized. I'll bring some of those things and show you as well. And immediately after that session, after that collaborating, that means, what did the person say? What does it mean to you from a biblical perspective, from a theological, from a practical, from a church perspective? Reflect on it. Do you fall short? So that means the word that was being preached, we had to sit and talk about it. We had to make notes. We had to submit our notes. So because I was table lead, all our notes had to go through to be uploaded onto a platform. answers to all those questions. And then immediately after that, they'll go into this other smaller session where there are about 3 or 4 speakers talking about the word that was presented. So the first Monday was about the Spirit of God, right? So what I chose here was the ministry focus just for Monday. These are some of the themes that were covered on the Monday morning, again, Monday evening. The supernatural acceleration of the work of the Holy Spirit in the 21st century. How God's Spirit is working through the church in the 21st century. And how that is being mapped and tracked. Let me just get back to the Monday notes here. The E21 vision. So someone else came, I forget the person's name, that came up and spoke about the E21 vision. I said I'll mention the year 2033. What's significant about the year 2033? Anyone? Let me tell you, like you, I didn't know as well until you started working through it, then I realized. When do we count our Christian calendar from? From the time Jesus was born, isn't it? So generally we say AD 33 is when Jesus went to the cross, he died, and he resurrected, right? You with me now? So 2033 is a significant year. 2,000 years exactly after Jesus ascended. And the prayer is that the Great Commission will be fulfilled by the year 2033, which is not a long way from now. And so that's a vision by this particular group that, that the Great Commission will be fulfilled in that time. And they have projected that it will take about quite a long time before it gets fulfilled. Because right now, tracking over the many centuries, the Christian population in the world has always been about 1/3. We're always sitting between 33 to 35% of the Christian population in the world. So here's another big statistic. 2/3 of the world is going to a lost eternity. And of that, 4,000 people die every hour, going to a lost eternity. That's massive, right? You and I have work. You and I have work to do. Okay, so some of the themes that work through that particular Monday. I'm not going to go through all of it. It's been on the screen for a while. So you get an understanding of what we are doing. So it wasn't like a jawl, right? It wasn't like a jawl holiday. No time to visit anyone, no time to have any fancy stuff, whatever. You went to the focus here, someone paid this thing here, someone sent you there, someone entrusted you to do this job. You need to go and get it done. And so, similarly, I've got notes and notes and notes here of things. I just sit with it myself and work through it and, let it work through my DNA and then filter it to the leadership, the church, and everybody else. So that's only Monday. I'm not going to go through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I chose just the Monday so you can see the connectedness between the theme for the day, the empowerment of the Holy Spirit, and then, what sub-themes worked through that as well. Okay. So what happened after lunch? I'll show you my lunches now. Show you some of my lunch pictures. So what happened after lunch? After lunch, there was this marketplace ministry thing, which was a very big track, right? And which I didn't attend because I was involved in many other sessions as a leader of tables. So I had to get myself into that zone before we went to those sessions. So in that 1.5 hours after lunch, generally these sessions were held with people at the workplace. And immediately after that was called the gaps. So from the Great Commission report, the organizing committee identified 25 gaps that, if addressed well, will in some way contribute to us achieving the Great Commission. So the 25 gaps and this dealt with whether it was evangelism, whether it was Hinduism, outreach, whether it was outreach to the Islamic community or whatever it is. So 25 gaps that were identified. I was situated in gap 19, which is people on the move. People on the move deals with diasporic nations that are moving from place to place. Dealt with refugees. Again, people are being displaced. And also dealt with international students. These are voluntary displacements. voluntary, involuntary displacement, a lot of terminology around transmigration. Of course, you know that I've been dealing a lot in the diaspora space. So I was fortunate that I was placed in a space where I'll function well. Again, I was a table leader at this particular table. There were 6 or 7 people around each table. The gentleman on the extreme left is Jeevan, Professor Jeevan of New Testament in Korea, in a university there, seminary there. The lady next to him from Canada, she's a researcher. The lady next to her is Korean. And by the way, Jeevan is ministering in Korea. And so that lady there and him always had arguments. They see the church in Korea from 2 different angles. One's a Korean who's seen the Korean church. One's a non-Korean who's observing the Korean church, and they have diametrically opposed views on the Korean church. And the Korean church is hectic, very conservative to a large extent. I see some of you in private. I'll tell you what they put on the doors of some of the churches. Not for public consumption. The guy right in the middle there, Ian Prescott, is from the UK, works at the OMF. The guy next to him is a cardiologist. He's a cardiologist who is situated in the United Arab Emirates, but who has a passion for some outreach work with a diasporic group in Australia. So he's a cardiologist. The guy next to him is an academic student and lecturing at a university, and he's Ethiopian. His special interest is in the nomadic people. Now, this is amazing, that sitting in this particular gap, which was identified with diasporic people, people on the move, we found a gap within the gap. The nomadic people were not addressed in the diasporic movement. Never. They were not looked at as people on the move. And there were 3 gentlemen sitting in this big meeting of about, I don't know, 500 of us in this meeting. And 3 of them that are actually focusing on the nomadic people. And we are fortunate to have this brother with us in our group. So that becomes a gap within a gap. How do you address? Because their understanding of church, their understanding of God, their understanding of life is very different from people who are situated in a particular spot. So we would sit around the table and talk through some of the sessions. And so on 4 days, each of those 4 days, a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we sat with these canvases on our table, huge pieces of paper on the table. And as we worked through each day, the first day was just to listen. That means each one of us spoke about our experience with diasporic people. The next day was to imagine. So that means as you spoke, what are the shortcomings? Why don't we have people of other communities? How do we address them? For example, I spoke about xenophobia in South Africa. It's a major issue. We are a very xenophobic nation. The church perpetuates that as well. The government agrees with it. And so we are very anti anyone else. But yet the number of people that have moved into our country is phenomenal, the numbers. It's a missional opportunity that we are missing. And so we spoke about, the next one was imagine. Imagine if that gap was filled, was complete, was achieved. What would it look like? And then the next day was to create. So now you give your situation, you're imagining in 50 years this gap is now closed, what that picture looks like. Your current picture, the picture of the future. Day 3 was, how do we get there? What are the strategies we need to employ to get there? And day 4 was then, how do we now communicate that to others so that we get there? By the way, this 2 hours a day. This was 2 hours a day. And you got intellectuals, academics, theologians, practical people debating. And me, those of you know me, I can control stuff. Sometimes I told them, you'll carry on. I just sat back and I listened. I was a table convener. I'm listening to your discussion, you'll carry on. The debates were heated because people are seeing from their own perspective. And you allow the discussion, then suddenly you come take control again. Because we knew kind of, that we need to achieve certain things by the end of the day. Now, all the information on these pages were then uploaded again onto a site. So it means, we were table number 13 in this group. There were, I don't know how many other tables in this group, in this room. All uploaded, and each affinity group, so within this gap, there are 7 affinity groups. And each of them, we might have about 3 of the same groups each. All our input has been uploaded into a document, filtered through using AI to get the main themes coming out. Because I've been busy, I've not gone back and got the information to read. So I'm very keen on trying to read that and see what's happening. So what's happening? The church leadership in the world coming together to focus, for example, focusing on one aspect. How do we fulfill the Great Commission through that aspect? And QEBC was a part of it. Your experience is my experience, which I took to this platform. And somewhere there, this thing will filter and come through. And even the work that we are doing here will come through. So that was that. So that just gives you some kind of an idea. Now from here, we'll move very quickly, right? What was phenomenal about this as well was that while the Congress was going on, they had two artists. Now, some of you may have seen that. I think I will try and share one of those electronic artists' pictures with you. That was mind-blowing. But so there are these two artists right in the front, near the stage area at the bottom. And this day here, can anyone tell me what you think this particular picture captures? Which day? This picture captures the third day, I think it is. Persecution and adversity. The red there actually just depicts the blood, the mess, that persecution brings in terms of the suffering. But out of that rises something beautiful. God's church still advances in all its beauty and in all its glory. The blood of the saints, those that have given their lives, still bears fruit. So that was I think it was the third day that day. The first day was the Spirit, the second day was people, third day was adversity. Here's another one. I didn't put all of them out for you. This, I think, was the whole issue on the workplace, cities and the workplace. That the gospel, and each person has a part and a role to play in contributing to the gospel. And so you had these pictures for each of the days as we were going through. Wonderful, beautiful pictures. That was just the art. And then you had the guy with, Stan, the guy that does the electronic. He's standing with a thing on his face and he's doing all these funny things, and on the screens we can see the picture being formed. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Absolutely. I hope it will be on YouTube at some stage, that art. Because as he was drawing, it was a tree. And as he flips the tree, he just flips the whole thing around. So we're not seeing what he's drawing on the other side. We're only seeing him draw a tree. And when he flips it around electronically, you see the cross of Jesus Christ. Beautiful. So that's some of the artwork that we enjoyed watching and just seeing other people's skills. So the gathering itself, the picture on the left there, that's just the queues as we joined the first day, just trying to enroll and get our stuff going. That's me, I think, on that Monday or the Tuesday, I can't remember, going to the conference. That's just outside the conference venue. And then the last picture there is just the way we were seated during the conference sessions. My day started at about 5 in the morning. I generally get up early in the morning to pray and all of that so that I can get going for the day. Breakfast very early in the morning at the hotel where I was staying in. About 7, the shuttle picks us up, about a 40-minute drive to the venue. And in the evening, we finished at 9. You joined the queues for the shuttle again, and you got back to the hotel at about 9:45, 10 o'clock. So that was our days. Non-stop. Even the last day on the Saturday morning, I had to be even earlier because I lugged all my luggage along with me to deposit it at the convention center and took my flight immediately after the conference was over. So full day, long hours. 5, basically it was a few hours sleep because after I got home, then calling a few people and connecting, sending messages, emails, and all of that. So really full. Okay, so let's go quickly. Here's some people that we connected. I think you might recognize the guy with the white hair there. And the guy in the middle there, okay, I'm pointing there, sorry, the guy here, John, when I took the Ethiopian Airlines and I had to sit in the middle. Now, I generally don't sit in the middle of the airplane. I'm always on the aisle because of my legs. I had booked that on my first flight. When the flights got messed up, I was sitting in the middle. So I sat in the middle, I looked at the guy, and I just greeted him, but he was just in a coat on the plane. And so when the plane was taking off, I said, I'm Louis, and who are you? He said, John. And I said, I'm a pastor, I'm from South Africa, and we're traveling. I'm going to Lausanne. He said, oh, I'm going to Lausanne too. I said, whoa, sorry, you get to Lausanne, I'm to Lausanne 4. And the joke started, obviously, and then we started talking. And he's sold out for the Lord, and, young man, just married, got a young kid, 2-week-old kid at home, and he's on his way to Korea for the conference. And we had a lovely conversation all the way about his ministry, his work, and it just so happened on the first day of the conference, I'm wearing my coat. You can see that I was trying to be official on the first day of the conference, the Sunday. Lots of guys wearing their coats. And then we bumped into each other. All of us just bumped into the foyer as we trying to get into the hall. And Cyril says, Louis. And then the other guy says, hey, Louis. I was going to look at him. Two people that I know. One guy with white hair. One guy with a lot of, one guy with no hair. And this guy, he photobombed us. But anyway, yeah. So that's that day. This is the day we arrived with still my T-shirt and all that. Just got disregistered. A Nigerian brother who works with youth. We met in the shuttle queue. One of the days during the conference, I met this dear brother from Kerala. He is a priest in the Marthoma church, the church that St. Thomas started in Kerala. He's one of the priests in those churches. And I tell you, this was what it was about, connecting with people. Man, the queues was the connecting point because we had massive queues. So you were connecting with people, just who they are, what they. By the way, I was mistaken for an Indian from India, but when they started talking to me, there was something wrong with your voice, something wrong with your body. Your head not moving and your voice is not. Where are you from? I'm from South Africa. So were you born in South Africa, or you moved to South Africa? I reckon I was born in South Africa. I reckon I'm 4th generation South African. They go, oh wow, Indian South African. They were quite shocked. So many people, that was a starting point for the conversation, and then about who you are, and so. The cultural day, I decided to wear my cultural outfit, forego my Indian outfit and wear an African shirt. And one of the sisters, I can't remember where she's from right now. I got the name somewhere in my notes. This is John Daniel. Christy might know John Daniel from SAIX, the South Asian Institute for Advanced Christian Studies in India. He's the academic dean. He's coming to South Africa next year for some time off. This is Jomo from Hillcrest Christchurch. We met there as well and connected. They've got all these big fellows outside all over the place. I don't know. They tend to like that. Most countries tend to like that. These massive statues and stuff there. Okay. One day standing there, these two young people here. He's from Nepal somewhere, I think, north of India, close to that part. She's from either Ecuador or Peru. We were chatting in the queue. They were curious about my accent and who I was and where I was from, and dynamic young people. There were lots of young people at this meeting. This lady here, Sabrina is French-speaking. She's from Guadeloupe. The first day that we landed at the hotel, after I registered, I went to the hotel. I went down to the restaurant because there was no supper provided for us. We had to get our supper. So this is like late in the evening. And of course, I looked at the pictures, and I called the lady and I said, I want this here. And she said, okay. I asked how many minutes. She said, 2 minutes. I said, 2. She said, no, two like that. I said, okay. 20. She said, okay. So I sat in the foyer waiting for my meal to get prepared. And this lady walked in, and she was looking quite confused. And so I sensed, I'm a pastor, you sense it. So I went up to her and said, you're trying to figure out what to buy. And they said, in French, she doesn't know what I'm talking about. So I said, you're wanting to buy something, and I bought this. So I told her very, very nicely, I bought this. And she says, oh, maybe I'll do. And so she went and got the same thing that I got. But let me tell you, so she was much later than me. So I took my food away, and I went upstairs. I saw a plate on the picture with some chicken on it. And so I assumed that was what I was getting. When the lady came with my food, which was about 24 Korean dollars, one or whatever it was, or whatever, 24,000 or something. It was a bag of chicken, pieces, that could feed my entire family. And we would have more, no rice, no nothing. So I took it, I went to my room, opened it up, and see a bag of chicken. So the next morning, obviously, it was a big joke, because as we got down to the hotel lobby to have breakfast, lo and behold, Sabrina's also coming to have breakfast. And she looks at me, and I said, so did you enjoy your supper last night? She said, whoa. I said, did you enjoy your supper last night? She says, oh! Well, let me tell you what I did with that chicken. I had about 3 pieces. It's still in the fridge in my hotel room. What do? You can't dump it in the bin. So I left it in the fridge. There was a fridge in the hotel room. You can't give it to anyone. So I just left it there and I said, hopefully someone's going to get it. But that's just, and then something about Sabrina, she's French speaking, and she told me the next day, when we connected again, she said, thank you for being a friend. Thank you for understanding that I can't speak English. So she was communicating via a cell phone, and we're trying to speak. She said, thank you for just being that, because I'm feeling so lost here. Everyone's speaking English and, other languages, and I'm a French-speaking person. So kind of she became a sister during that trip, and so she surprised me on the day before we could leave. I was already in my hotel room, and she calls, she says, Louis, I'm in the hotel lobby. Can you come down? I just want to have a word with you. So I rushed down. I thought something happened. So I rushed down. She's got this massive Bible, about 5 kilos. And I'm looking at this Bible. It says, I want to bless you with this Bible. It's a business Bible. I want to bless you with this Bible because you have been a blessing to me. So a couple of things happened over the course of the week that I started talking into her life to give her some direction in terms of, what she needs. She's from the medical legal fraternity in Guadalupe. Quite educated, very high up. But in terms of what she wants to do for the Lord, she's a bit confused. And so just the talking through the week helped her to focus. And so she comes with this 5-kilo Bible, and I got a 20-kilo bag limit. My bag was already full. And I'm like, what do you do with this Bible? And I had to take it. I brought it all the way. So when we went to Thailand, I bought nothing because my bag was already full. And I couldn't get rid of the Bible. But I brought it home with me. So she became a friend, a sister. Then the others, Krista, you might recognize Professor Mburu from Kenya. In the middle, she was with us in Cape Town. And Tryphenia or Tryposia, something like that, September. Her name is September, yeah. From Cape Town with OM. So she snagged a picture when she saw me there as well. Some pictures here, that's Seelan. Seelan was there. And so I told him, Seelan, if I don't take the picture with you, Christy will be very disappointed. Seelan was the director of the OM ships. And he's still serving, I think, because this gentleman, this bald-headed guy, that's Pastor Anton. He was also there. And so we were able to connect with them. So in 5,000 people to meet some of these people was phenomenal. You just got to connect with them at this year, but it was great. So that's kind of the eating area. So you must know you had 5,000 people sitting on one side. The other side, you could have people who were accommodated to sit and eat. It was a mission, but you got in and you ate your food. So that was a good thing. And then there's a buffet. This is kind of a buffet. I won't tell you what is there. We had some fancy things. That's me trying chopsticks, Elida. Right, the guys told me what to do with the chopsticks. I did it carefully, did it once, that was it, and I took the picture. Well, they took the picture. And so this is what kind of our main meals were consist of. Either that, kind of a sandwich with some soup and some salads and other stuff there, or it was this kind of a meal. You got some fruit, you got some kimchi, you got some jellyfish salad with greens, you got some rice pudding, you got some rice, you got some soup, some 3 kinds of meat that's there. And that was your basic meal. It looked very little, but it was quite a lot. So that's the meals that we enjoyed. We thoroughly enjoyed. The volunteers, let me tell you, they must have had over 1,000 volunteers. They worked nonstop. From the time we left our hotel room in the morning, they were at our hotel doors. They were at the bus. When we got off the bus, along that road to walk to the venue, every 10 meters there was a volunteer greeting you, waving to you, good morning, so good to see you. And they worked tirelessly. And they just smiled and they greeted you and they exuded the love of God. It was phenomenal. As the Korean church really did well, so here's some volunteers there. And even when we were leaving, the day we were leaving, I stopped to take a picture as I was rushing out to catch my bus. Again, goodbye. Goodbye. Thank you for coming to Korea. Goodbye. Just waving, smiling. They worked tirelessly. I really appreciated them. Some lessons very quickly. I will share with you the State of the Great Commission report. One, it is very inspiring because it puts into perspective that the Church of Jesus Christ is working and it is growing. Please get that message out. We hear time and time again, the church is not growing, the church is not doing anything. Brothers and sisters, the church is growing. People are coming to the Lord. The fastest growing church right now is in Iran. The largest percentage of Christians on the globe is in Africa, per continent. Africa is sending out missionaries phenomenally, year by year. The church is growing. Let it excite you. At QEBC, we may do 3 things to fulfill the Great Commission. The church down the road is doing 2 things. Another church is doing 1 thing. Another church is doing 10 things. Together, we are all fulfilling the Great Commission. QEBC will not do 100 things. It will do 2 or 3 things and it will do it well. Because all of us in some way is still achieving this. Let it inspire us. That's the thing about this. 2, it must also inform us as to what still needs to be done so that we can pray or we can see how we can get involved in it. But please do not think that QEBC can fulfill the Great Commission on its own. Never. There is too much to the Great Commission to be achieved than you and I just taking Matthew 28, 19 to 20 at face value. That's one part of fulfilling the Great Commission. Number 2, collaboration and networking are critical. We must find partners in other places that have a similar vision as we do so we can collaborate with them. Or if you want to move on to a new venture, look at what other people are doing. You know, at Lausanne and in other spaces, there's so much happening in different pockets, in different places. We think we want to do something, it's the first time it's ever been done. Someone's done it before. Don't reinvent the wheel. We spend a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of resources trying to reinvent the wheel when it has already been invented and it's running well somewhere else. We need to go there and talk to them as to how it's been done, so we don't spend all of that time wasting energy and resources. Collaboration and networking are critical. And this is across the church, not in a denomination, across the church. Thirdly, the persecuted church, now this is where we score a lot of points, but there's still a lot of work to be done in making people aware of persecution and also action involved in terms of that. Talking to a Pakistani pastor, I'll close by half past that. We're talking to a Pakistani pastor the first night, the Monday night, standing in the queue waiting for our bus to go. Just conversation. So he's giving me his background story about how he became a pastor, how God spoke to him one night, told him to read Proverbs 8 something, and let's forget the verse. He is not a Christian. His wife is a secret believer. She's been praying for his salvation. He doesn't know that. But God speaks to him one night and tells him to open to this verse. And the verse is about something to do with wisdom. Who's got wisdom? And then he doesn't understand this verse, what it means. The vision that he has is to go to a pastor that he knows in that area to ask him to explain. The pastor doesn't want to entertain him because he thinks he's a spy coming to suss him out. And God uses that. And when he tells his wife finally she can't contain herself, and she opens herself up to him. So this. And so he's talking to me about his testimony. And then I tell him, brother, we know what you're going through. Our church prays for you. He looked at me. What do you mean, brother? I said, our church prays for the persecuted church. We pray that God will reveal himself to people like you the way he did. His eyes are open wide and his mouth is open wide. He's telling me, are you telling me that churches pray for us? I said, churches pray. Maybe not all the churches, but churches pray. And we are one. I took out my phone, I went to the men's chat, and I showed him, see, every day we get prayer requests for the persecuted church. The brother nearly cried. He said, I didn't know that churches are doing this. I told him about the IDOP, the Pray for the Persecuted Church, and what we do. The third day, when you're talking about persecution around that table, C34, people knew a little bit about it, but they didn't know what to do. I was able to share with them. Guys, this is what you can do. And they were like, oh, you can actually, I said, yeah, this is what you can do to pray for the persecuted church. So I phoned Christy that same night and I told him, thank you so much for being that person at our church who does this. God has a purpose for it. For me to leave here, to go there, to tell someone there, we pray for you. For him to understand that dynamic. Then he now can start praying for other people. And 6 people around the table to be educated about the process of praying. That's how God works. Intergenerational leadership must be intentional. I think we started it to some extent here in our church with the young leaders coming in, but this is important for the church to grow. Lausanne has a young leaders summit, a younger leaders summit, which takes place now in 2026 in Brazil for people under 35. Let me tell you, all of the people on the foreground of Lausanne, the faces that you saw on your screens, are all people under the age of 35. The MCs, the people promoting the events, talking, all that's the younger generation. South Africa has also chosen, we chose about 8 people to be part of that, and hopefully some of them will go to Brazil in 2026. And then diasporic missiology, I won't talk much about this because that's my passion, but we'll talk more about it. How do we read the Bible through the lens of displacement? And if you read the Bible through the lens of displacement, you will start seeing God is also a God on the move. It's Motus Day. God is on the move. God movement. In fact, just to let you know, the first man was also a man displaced. He was kicked out of the garden. That's the first displacement. He gets replaced and situated in the new heaven and the new earth in Revelation. Every single one of us, all of us here are displaced people. Our forebears are not from here. They're from somewhere else. So when we look at other people around us, don't look at them differently. They're just like you. Only thing you've been here longer. And your passport says you belong to this country. That's all it's. Nothing else. So we look through the eyes of, when you start reading the Bible through the lens of displacement and this diaspora, you realize that all of us are in the same situation. So that's some lessons to learn. This picture was taken from the highest hotel in Incheon or in Korea. Someone told me, let's go up there, we can go up to the top floor. I said, oh, can we? So we went up right near the convention center, and from there I took this picture here. You can see the rest of the city. And I had tea there as well. I was feeling for some tea. They actually had tea, the only place I had tea. They don't make tea in Korea.